desire when I hold you near.
Hi, my name is Greg, your personal piano professor, and I'm here today to give you an overview on what it's going to take you to actually learn chords and be able to play them fluently on the keyboard. I think the single most amount of visitors that come to my website are interested in chords and chord theory and playing by ear, and my email bears out the same conclusion. People call and ask, you know, how to play arpeggios and how do I play chords with the left hand melody with the right, but generally it's all about chords. So we're going to give you an overview in this video of 7 steps that, you know, 7 things you're going to need to know, and some of them you're going to need to do. So there's some mental work as well as some physical work here too. And this it's really just designed to give you a overview of what it's going to take for you to master chords and to be able to play them. A lot of people will just go on YouTube, or they get a chord book and they look at a picture of a chord without understanding anything about it, and they try and memorize the chord. There's a D chord, you know, and they remember that. But if you'll follow the steps that I'm going to give you, you'll be able to see a chord symbol like A flat minor 7 flat 5, and without ever having seen it or played it before, you'll know what that chord is. And this is going to save you years of you know, looking up and doing it one by one, learning, memorizing chords, having some expensive chord book, you know, going on and every time you need a new chord, looking on YouTube for a video. So it's going to save you a lot of time, and it's just going to make you a better player. First thing you need to know is real basic. Probably most of you know this, and that's just the names of the notes, the layout of the keyboard. Now, there are 12 notes on the keyboard, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and they repeat. The way you teach it real quick, and I'm going to give you links at the end of this video at the bottom of the page, the website page at pianolessonsforlife.com, to go further into these concepts. But basically, the white keys, to identify a starting key, we have the sets of 2 black keys and 3. To the left of the set of 2 is the C. And the musical alphabet has 7 letters. But we're going to start with C here. C, then D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is a repeat of 1. All right? That's a C major scale. You probably already know this. The names of the black keys, depending on how they're approached, would be C sharp or D flat. Sharp going up, flat coming down like a flat tire. So we've got, they all have 2 names. Don't get too confused by it right now. Just know that they all have 2 names. So we've got C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and C. Coming down we have B, B flat, A flat, G, G flat, F, E flat, D, and D flat. So they have 2 names. That one's F sharp or G flat. So basically there's a lesson, and you follow the link, first link, if you need a little more review of that concept, then that's on the website for you. Now, the next real thing that you need to know once you learn the names of the notes is the major scale. And but first the concept of intervals, which is the distance between 2 notes. Okay, the smallest distance between 2 notes is called a half step. Half step means there's no note in between. So if we climb up every note, by the way, this is up the keyboard, this is down, these notes are higher, these notes are lower. Okay, so we go in half steps. It's like climbing a ladder. Every note, half step, half step, half step, half step, half step, half step, half step. Now you can see a half step can be from a white to a black, from a black to a white, or from a white to a white, as long as there's no note in between. 2 half steps equals a whole step, so skip that one. There's a whole step. There's another whole step. There's a half step. There's another whole step. Skip that one. Whole step. Whole step, half step. And so you need to know the difference between a whole step and a half step. And that gets you, leads you into the next really important thing to know. Now you know a little, the names of the notes on the piano keyboard, and you also know the difference between a whole step and a half step. And now, having learned that concept, whole steps and half steps, it's time to learn about the major scale, and the major scale formula is made up of whole steps and half steps. So here's what you need to remember. 2 wholes and a half, 3 wholes and a half. So 2 whole steps and a half step, and then 3 whole steps and a half step will give you a major scale, and you can start on any note, use that formula to figure out the major scale. Once you know that, you can figure out all the chords that have the same name as that major scale. In C, it was easy to see. Whole step 1, whole step 2, half step, then 3 wholes, 1, 2, 3, and a half step. Let's try a different scale using that formula. Let's say E. See, if you're going to figure out an E major chord, you're going to have to know that E major scale. And again, the formula is the same. So 2 whole steps. Now look at here, a whole step, skip that one. Alright, whole step, skip that one. Half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and a half step. So that's the E major scale. And you'll recognize it also by the way it sounds, and that is starting to develop your ear. If you're going to be a play-by-ear person, your ear is going to get developed as you hear these things. Let's do one more. D. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. D major scale. Okay, so it's pretty simple, and you're going to want to go through and learn those scales, see how they look and feel on the keyboard. Everything that I'm telling you here, there's going to be a link after the video on the page to give you a more in-depth. So if you didn't understand it from my short tutorial here, you can go and get it repeated. There are other videos and other pictures and all that kind of good stuff on the website. So now we figured out a major scale, and again there are 12 of them. There's a C major, a C sharp or D flat scale, a D major, an E flat or D sharp scale, and so on and so on. Okay, just a little bit more about intervals too. Whole steps and half steps aren't the only intervals, and we'll get into that too. There's a page on intervals too. Once we start learning about chords, you'll learn about the intervals of thirds and fifths and sevenths. From 1, 2, 3, that's the interval of a third. This is the interval of a fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm using the C scale again just because it's easy to see. The interval of a fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a sixth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a seventh, and that's called an octave. So now, once we know the major scale, there are some simple formulas that are based on the scales that will give you the chords that you're going to see when you're playing music. So let's just start with a simple one. A major chord based on the major scale. So if you see C major or just a C chord on your piano music, you're going to have what we call a root, which is going to be C, the name of the chord you're trying to figure out, a third, and a fifth. So a C major chord will have a root, 1, 2, a third, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a fifth. So there's a C major chord, okay? And those major chords are going to be the first ones you're going to want to learn and get to know. All right, so let's take a D scale and find out a D major chord. First, if you know the scale, you go whole step, half step, whole step, 2 wholes and a half. So now all you really need to know is the first 5 to figure out the major chords, because you have the first, the third, or the root, the third, and the fifth, and that gives you a D major chord. Pretty simple, huh? Let's try a F sharp major chord. Again, you have to know the scale. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. But you take the first, the third, and the fifth, and you've got the major chord. Now there are a whole bunch of major different kinds of chords. These are three-part chords. For instance, there's the C major chord we learned, root, third, fifth. Now if you look on your chart and you learn the formula for a minor chord, it's a root, or one, a minor third, or a lowered third, which means we take that third and lower to half step, and then a fifth. That's the formula for a minor chord. C major, C minor. A little darker, sadder sound, okay? So those are the basic first chords you're going to want to deal with, which is the major, basic major, and minor three-part chords, okay? There are also, and all the formulas, again, they're on the website. There's a cute little chart there so you can learn that a seventh chord has a root, 1, 3, 5, and a flatted seventh, which means that's a seventh chord. That's a C7 chord. This one, 1, 3, 5, and natural 7, this is C major 7th chord, kind of a pretty sounding chord. And then the 7th is that bluesy sort of chord. So all of those formulas, again, are going to be on the website, and there's a link called Chord Formulas that you can click to get them all. Now once you learn a chord, you know, mentally you're going to have to learn to play it. And how we do that is going to be explained in the next part of this video. So you've learned about the keyboard layout, you've learned about intervals, whole steps, half steps, thirds, fifths, sevenths, that kind of thing. And again, there are links at pianolessonsforlife.com on the page called Learning Piano Chords that'll give you more in-depth. This is just an overview, things you got to know. Now, once you know your chord formulas, and again, there's a dozen or so of them, you know, minor sevenths, sevenths, major sevenths, minor 7, flat 5, diminished chords, augmented chords. I'm not going to go through all of them here, so you'll need to go and learn those formulas. But we'll talk about what you do once you learn one. So, okay, I learned my scale, I learned my C major chord. Now, playing them requires muscle memory. Muscle memory requires repetition, and repetition means you're going to have to practice. Now, when I was at Berklee College of Music basically for professional musicians, this is what they taught me to do. So I'm going to have a C chord, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to want to know it with both hands. Okay, chords can be played two ways, either as block chords, notes all together, or as broken chords, which means the notes are played separately, okay? Those are also called arpeggios, all right? And there's a lesson on arpeggios, on broken chords like that, on the website as well. The next concept is, because a chord has three notes, a root, a third, and a fifth, a major chord, it also has three inversions. Now when we invert something, we take the bottom and we make it the top. So in this chord, the bottom is the C, and if I take it from there and move it up on top, I've got a C chord played in a different inversion. They call that root position, first inversion. Now I take the E note, which is now the bottom, move it up to the top. There's my second inversion, C chord. All of them are C chords. And again, you'd be back to root position again. So what I had to do is, every time I learned a chord, I had to learn it in all the inversions. Okay? And that just takes practice. Oh, sorry. Guess I need to practice more. So there's all the 2 octaves of the C chord in each of its inversions. And again, that just requires repetition and muscle memory. You start to notice things. In the root position, it's every other white note. In the first position, you skip 1, then skip 2. And then you skip 2 and skip 1 in the third inversion. So you're going to be watching your hands, so visually you're going to be able to play these chords, and you'll eventually get the muscle memory too as well. But it requires doing it over and over again. Let's take a D chord. Remember, we figured that one out. Whole step, or 1, 3, and 5. So there's the inversions, and you want to do them up and down the piano keyboard. Okay, and you can also do them as broken chords as well too. Good practice to do, and again, that takes repetition over and over again. You're going to want to do the same for your 4-part chords. Let's take the chord formula for a 7th chord is 1, 3, 5, and flat 7. Okay, there's a C 7th chord. And again, there's actually 4 inversions of that. The root position, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion, and back to root position. And again, you're going to want to be able to play those all the way up and down the keyboard. Haven't done them for a while, but again, it's a good piano exercise. That's what they had me do in school, and that's what I'm telling you to do the best way. And eventually you're going to see that some chords feel the same on the piano. Let's take a C chord, every other white note. F chord, every other white note. 1, 3, 5. Okay, so if you learn the C chord up and down, it's going to feel the same. The muscle memory is going to feel the same for the F chord. Okay, so you're going to want to learn your inversions up and down the keyboard. Okay, learn them as block chords and also as arpeggios. Arpeggios, I just got a question on that. This is a good way to practice that. You can basically move your hand to the next octave and play an arpeggio like that. It's a little tricky. Or you can use 2 hands, play and have the left hand cross over the right. So now you've got this going on. That's an arpeggio. Sorry for knocking the camera there. Or you can do this. That's kind of nice sounding, and it sort of extends the arpeggio because you're playing right, left hand, left hand does what right hand does, and you're moving up the keyboard that way. Okay, that's an arpeggio, and again, that requires just practice, and you want to do them in tempo. That means that you want them steady. Basically, you play them steadily or rhythmically like that, okay? So we've talked about inversions, we've talked about arpeggios, and the next thing that's going to happen is once you, and I recommend that when you're learning a song, you don't want to learn all the chords all at once and do that. Take it easy. If you're learning a song and it has 3 chords in it, C, F, and G, get to know those chords. Fortunately, those ones all kind of feel the same. 3, F, and G, they're all white note chords. So, and a lot of teachers, including myself, teach that key of C because of that reason. It's a little bit easier fingering-wise, although some may disagree. The next thing you need to know is chord progressions. Now that you know inversions. And I'm going to talk about one chord progression that's very popular. It's 1-4-5 progression. And when you learn this progression, you've learned hundreds and hundreds of songs. So, oh yeah, let's talk about the numbers. Why 1-4-5? Because each note has a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the major scale. There's a chord built on each one of those notes. And the 1 chord is called C major. The 2 chord is called D minor, or it's a minor chord, and in any key it's going to be the same. The 3 chord is a minor chord, E minor. The 4 chord is a major chord. 5 chord's a major chord, minor. This one's called a diminished chord. And this one, that's a B diminished and a C major chord. So when somebody says it's a 1-4-5 progression, it means the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. And basically, those 3 chords you'll be able to play a lot of different songs on that. So what they had me do is to be able to move from one chord to another. Instead of going 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, or let's do it the right hand here so you can see 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. A lot of hand motion there. So we learn to use inversions. So the C chord and the F chord have a common note. It's the C note, C, E, G, and F, A, C. So if I'm going to go from a C chord to an F chord, and I don't want to move my hand all the way up here, I keep the C here and grab the F and the A there. That's an inversion. Okay, rather than... That takes, especially if you're a beginner, it takes a lot more concentration, and you got to look at your hand and see how far you've gone. So that's really easy. And again, repetition. You're going to have that movement from 1 to 4 in lots of songs. Okay, and now you want to learn it in the different inversions from C to F, and from C to F here. Okay, and again, you take little exercises like that and you do them over and over again. Now when you see a C chord and an F chord, instead of looking down and all of that, your hands are going to remember how that's played. I said 1, 4, 5 is the common progression, so we've got C to F, which is 1 to 4, and we've got C to G. Now the C and the G have a common note. In that case, it's the G note. So C chord is C, E, G, G chord is G, B, D. So instead of jumping way up here, I keep the G, tie over that common tone, and I get my G, the rest of my notes for my G chord, the B and the D down here. So here's the first chord progression I had to learn, and here's how I practiced it. It's 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. And do them in both hands. Okay, to do everything you learn with your left hand, learn it with your right hand too, especially with chords. Even though a lot of times you are playing chords with your left hand and melody with your right. You still want to know those chords in both hands. So I've learned that progression in root position, learned that progression in first inversion, okay, learn that progression in second inversion. And you're going to have to do it for whatever key you're playing in. Now you don't have to learn to play in every key all at once, it'll happen. Let's just take that same progression in the key of E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my 1 chord is E, my 4 chord is an A, back to 1, and my 5 chord is a B. If you didn't use the inversions, it would be this. Much harder to play it. Okay, so you're going to have to practice your basic progressions, and there's a whole bunch of them. And some of them are very common. As a matter of fact, most pop songs use the same 4 chords. So now, learn the keyboard layout. You learn half steps and whole steps, basically. You learn the formula using those half steps and whole steps for a major scale. Major scale, big important thing to learn. Then, if you go to the website, you'll see all the chord formulas based on those scales. And then one by one, and usually generally as you're using them in songs, you want to get really familiar and get comfortable. No way to do that other than spaced repetition, which is called practice. 20 minutes a day, you know, you'll make some great progress. Again, there are 3 and 4 part chords, 7th chords, minor 7th chords, minor 7 flat 5 diminished chords. All of those are covered on the website. And that's the best way to go about learning chords. And again, there's all kinds of different common things that happen. little exercises, and these are on the website. I just played all the 4-part chords in the key of C down the keyboard. And, in G you're going to have to remember that there's a sharp and F sharp, and you have to remember that. Okay. Again, all of this stuff is on the website, but when you get on there, it's hard to know what order to use the lessons in, and that's precisely why I did this video and this lesson. So I hope you got something out of this. It's not that bad. It sounds like a lot right now, but just start at the beginning and go slowly and enjoy yourself learning the piano. Believe me, it's real rewarding to get these basics in your mind and under your fingers. That way you can figure out any chord whenever you need to, just by knowing the formulas that I gave you. Also like to remind you to, search around the website. You're going to find a lot of good articles that are going to be helpful with your playing. Every now and then I put up a chart for a popular song. Also use the contact me form on the website to contact me, ask me questions. That this whole lesson came from people asking me questions about chords and how to learn them best. So keep in contact with me. I'll try and get back to you. I'm spending more time on working on the website lately, so maybe you and I can become piano buddies. And again, my name is Greg. You're let me see, what am I saying? You're a personal piano professor, and you have a great day. Come back and visit me again.